Bucks remain unbeaten in NBA Cup group play game. The Giannis struggle to 41 points. We break it down coming up after this.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Bucks. I'm Justin Garcia, joined by Frank Madden. We thank you for making this your first listen of the day, each and every day. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if that bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. The 2025-26 version of the NBA Cup begins for the Bucks. And are they the only team? Who else was unbeaten? They have to be the only team that's. Are they the only team that's now 9-0 in group play in the history of this tournament that everybody loves and tracks so closely? That's the important part, Frank.
Darvin Ham. It's the Darvin Ham effect.
They've never lost in a group play game. They got quite a test from the Chicago Bulls, and this game was interesting because if you just zoom in and look at most of the box score, you're like, oh man, Giannis dominated again. He did dominate the fourth quarter and a large part of the third quarter, but I think he took 30 shots and
32.
Man, this was another one of those where I think he did this in the Wizards game too, where there was a lot of these looks that just didn't fall. You're like, man, Giannis is missing a lot of shots at the rim, but then we started to see more of the same and more of what Doc has gone on and on about, in that there's a decent amount of contact on plays that Giannis is just not getting whistled, that at times I can't help but get deja vu to Damian Lillard not getting the call the last 2 years that he was in Milwaukee.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially smaller players, which is most human beings, they're going to get away with a ton of like body contact to his chest, upper arms, etc. And, you know, as Doc said, right, like he just plays through it. I think he said an official even told him that, like, well, he just sort of plays through it. So, you know, he will get obviously like, I mean, generally he'll get like if people are just like slapping his wrists and things like that. Although, you know, we've even seen times like was it in the Raptors game where it seems like even some of that stuff doesn't get called. So, I mean, look, he's really hard to officiate. And I don't know, to be honest, I've never had as big of an issue with the Giannis sort of whistle, just because part of me feels like, you know, it's like the Shaq thing. It's like you could call a foul almost every possession if you were really wanting to. And, you know, I the main thing that I just get frustrated when he gets called for, you know, like the charges where the ref is like trying to find an excuse to call a charge or an offensive foul that isn't there. And I think there's been like one or two of those, maybe from our friend Chris Middleton might have been the one of them. But I don't think really like I think he's generally avoided like charges pretty well this year. You know, it's been more just not getting the whistles offensively in terms of getting foul calls. But, you know, like, but this is the upside of being just, you know, a freight train and, you know, like the NBA's Hulk is that you can just power through and finish half the time anyway. So that's ultimately kind of what he did at numerous points, especially in the second half, as you pointed out, is he just sort of decided like, all right, I'm just monster trucking you guys. I'm just not going to be denied. And, you know, it was a frustrating game, I think, especially in the first half. I mean, the Bulls like were obnoxious and annoying. And like, you know, Giannis like lost the ball a couple times, missed some chippies, you know, a lot of it I think was sort of self-inflicted. He'll look back and say like, man, I just kind of blew that layup or whatever it might be. But you know, give the Bulls some credit. I think they, you know, defended, especially in transition, you know, repeatedly, and made, you know, swarmed enough to make Giannis's life a little bit difficult. And then I think, you know, he took a number of jumpers tonight. I think he hit 2 long twos and a pretty big 3 in the fourth quarter when they were up 5, and that I think put them up 8, I want to say. So, the mid-ranger in particular just continues to not be there consistently, which I think is one of those interesting things to monitor. Like last year, he got into a rhythm early in the season. It just sort of continued throughout the whole season, and he had a great year shooting from the mid-range. And this year, it just feels a lot more out of rhythm and at times kind of forced. And some of them I feel like he's taking some that are, I think, too difficult given that he's not in a good rhythm, if that makes sense, right? Like, I feel like he needs to get some more on balance, like guys backing up. He's begging you to shoot those. Don't take the like lean back guys in your airspace type of threes. So we'll see. But it's like, this is the hilarious part. Like, Giannis not getting calls, Giannis missing mid-rangers. And then, like you said, what does he have in the box score? 41, 14 and 9 assists. I mean, he's just a force of nature. And just the physical dominance and just his, I want to say too, I think people unfairly sort of caricature him as like, oh, it's just all just physical. And it's like, there have been lots of guys with incredible physical gifts, but his combination of the physical tools, strength with the ball handling and the brain too. Like, people won't talk about his ability to know how to set the defense up, pick his spots, and make those, dribble, pass, shoot decisions. I mean, that's what makes him Giannis. That's what makes him an MVP. So yeah, I mean, again, even on a night where, it wasn't his best game, he ends up putting up just a monster stat line yet again, and was the difference down the stretch. He's the guy that makes a difference. He's the reason the Bucks are 6-3, and obviously this was a pretty important game. It's game 9 of 82, but even putting aside the NBA Cup sort of significance of it, the Bulls are ahead of you in the East standings, right? One of the few teams. They've had a really nice start to the year, and obviously the Bulls have come in and beaten the Bucks at times. It's not like they're incapable of doing this. So I think it was a nice effort, especially in the second half. And I think there's it was a weird defensive game. We can talk about that. Ultimately defensive numbers were quite good. Defensive rebounding was excellent. And they needed that because certainly the offense kind of came and went a little bit, but ultimately carried them to, 122 offensive rating and like a 106 defensive rating. Like, yeah, that'll play.
Yeah, I do want to talk about the defense and some other guys that really stood out in this one. But as we sit here now, Frank, and the day has wrapped up, the Central Division and the powerhouse that it is, the top 4 records in the Eastern Conference, all coming from the Central Division now. So who knew the Bucks were in the toughest division in the league all of a sudden for how tough the Western Conference is. The defense, though, and the rebounding, Camille and I talked about one of the things there with what we've seen on the glass recently on 2 days ago's show. We saw some of those changes, and we saw some interesting rotations from Doc Rivers in this game. So we'll get into that conversation coming up next. Well, the NBA season's heating up, and DoorDash has found the perfect way to keep fans in their bag all season long. Whether you're watching for highlights, your fantasy team, or just your favorite player, DoorDash makes every game night even better. DoorDash is the official on-demand delivery platform of the NBA, and they're celebrating with something called the Bag Drop. Every time an NBA player scores 50 points in a game, DoorDash drops 50% off your order with Dash Pass the next day. And you're automatically entered for a chance to win the ultimate fan bag. We're talking player-inspired drip, exclusive gear, and stuff you'll actually want. It's not just food. You can get everything from snacks and drinks to headphones, ice, even socks, all delivered directly to your door. DoorDash has you covered for late-night highlights, last-minute watch parties, and double overtime fuel ups. So next time someone goes off for 50, use the promo code NBA50 the next day to get 50% off on Dash Pass. Plus, your shot at the bag drop. Dash Pass members only, 50% off up to $10 the next day after a 50-point game with promo code. Terms apply. No purchase necessary. Ends April 13th. Open to U.S. residents 21 or older. Visit DoorDashInYourBag.com for full details. DoorDash in your bag all season long. So the defense was much improved, especially in the second half. And, watching some of the recent Bulls games too, I think it's one of the trends with this group is their loss to the Knicks, the first half against the Sixers too. If you're going to be physical with them, that's where you can slow them down and they start to struggle a little bit. The Bucks were not doing that. It felt like they were kind of playing on skates for most of the first half of the game. And then the physicality started to creep in. And what we started to see throughout the game too was the Bucks playing with more size. And this, I believe, was the first game, at least that I can recall, where Doc really staggered Giannis and Myles Turner. So we saw that. We saw Jericho Sims on the floor. I think the lineup that they had was like Bobby, Kuzma, and Jericho Sims together, which you thought like, oh, okay, hopefully you can rebound, but what about the other end of the floor? But they really, Kuz too played nearly 30 minutes. We did not see a ton of your smaller guards paired together outside of Cole Anthony and Ryan Rollins, but like your starters, for example, of Gary Trent Jr. and AJ Green, I don't remember much of them playing together through the course of the game. And a lot of that had to do with Gary Trent Jr. just didn't play a lot because it wasn't a great game.
Yeah, I mean, kind of the last couple of days, I've started to wonder, with the combination of that starting group, first off, Gary hasn't been great offensively, or at least, not consistently at the level that, certainly we saw sort of late in the second half of last season. And that, can come and go, right? I wouldn't make like a rotate lineup decision.
He did the same thing the first 8 games of the season last year.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think he was definitively worse, at the beginning of last season, and he had the injury too. So I'm wary of like making a decision just because like, shots aren't necessarily going in for Gary Trent. But I think, my big concern has just been like, they just seem too small. They, again, can't defend without fouling, and they can't, control the defensive glass the way that, we have seen this team typically do it in the past. Yeah. And so, if you foul too much and you can't get defensive rebounds, it means you're not ending possessions. And it's going to be too easy on, the other team offensively. So I was starting to wonder, it's like, boy, at some point here, like, do we see Taurean Prince just to give them a more traditional, sized lineup? And obviously Prince can still shoot. I don't think he's as good as Gary Trent in terms of just like speed of shot and versatility of shot creation. But he's, just bigger, and I think lets you play, without that same size deficit that they are signing up for right now, just by virtue of the 3-guard starting lineup. And certainly in the beginning of this game, they go down whatever it was, 18-11. I know I don't remember some of the other scores, but they had the slow start. It was like 8-1, and then 18-11. And I think there were 4 offensive rebounds in the first quarter, and I just felt like, oh man, are we doing this again? But fortunately, that didn't really carry over. I mean, you said I don't think the defense was great in the first half, but they only allowed 8 offensive rebounds the whole game. I think it was like a 15% out defensive rebound rate, or 17% offensive rebound rate for Chicago, which is very low. So that's, if not the Bucks' best defensive rebounding performance of the season, right up there, I think. And again, not that the Bulls are like trying to bludgeon you to death with size, right? I mean, they're not playing like too big, like 2 traditional bigs or something like that a lot. But it was important, I mean, I feel like it's generally been, long rebounds, and just seems like a lot of times it's just like small guys recovering the ball that has hurt them. So the fact that they did a much better job there, I think was obviously encouraging, and just sort of like, maybe more of a relief than anything. But I think that was at least some positive strides. And, I think the staggering is something that obviously has implications on both ends. And, I mentioned Taurean Prince. Taurean Prince did not play today, which, was a notable absence due to an apparent neck injury of some sort. We'll have to see what exactly that means. But this is a team that already is very lacking in size on the wing. And now you have basically Kyle Kuzma and ... Giannis ? Amir Coffey suddenly becomes more important if Taurean Prince is out for an extended period. But even looking on the bench, it's like, Andre Jackson has been more of a, lead guard defender, not a like big wing defender. And, like Gary Harris, I don't think Gary Harris is the same size as these other short guards. And he's certainly on kind of the wrong end of his career, it seems, at this point. So yeah, it was a bit worrying there in the beginning, but I think it was, encouraging to see a little bit of the bounce back over the course of the game. Still not a good game for Gary Trent. So his, kind of struggles, 2 for 9, 5 points. Only 23 minutes tonight, continues. AJ Green also only 2 for 8, both threes, but did have 5 assists, which, is an interesting stat number. He was plus 17. So it was, again, just somehow, some way, AJ Green just always seems to be on the floor when kind of good things happen. But yeah, it was interesting there. And then I think as far as the staggering goes, I mean, they obviously had to stagger a little bit differently because of Taurean Prince. So the kind of small forward rotation was screwed up. But, I think the fact that they staggered Myles and Giannis is something that we've talked a fair bit about. And I've talked about it mainly in the context of like, is there some way you can get Myles going by not having him just always be out there with Giannis, where obviously the offense is, we know who the offense is going to run through. And of course, Myles will get some spot up shots, but it's going to be hard to get him into the game in kind of different ways unless you kind of more proactively try to run like some of the high-low type stuff that, Giannis and Brook ran. So, the fact that we finally see that staggering and Myles immediately pops up with by far his best offensive performance of the season, 23 points on 14 shots. I mean, I think still a lot of that came with Giannis on the floor. So it's not like, he was unleashed with playing, with Kyle Kuzma, but again, I think they need to do that if nothing else, just to kind of balance some of the lineups. And, we know Giannis can play with Bobby Portis, and Bobby hit, I guess he only hit 1 3 tonight, but it's obviously a combination that we've seen work just fine. So I'm hopefully we're going to see more of that, and hopefully that kind of balances out kind of the starters versus bench units a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I thought this was probably Myles' best game in a Bucks uniform on both ends of the floor, not just the scoring. Like I think he had 4 steals.
4 steals
in the game. He started a couple of fast breaks with that. I mean, that's the other big difference too with this, when it's clicking, this defense this year versus last year, is they just have more guys with quicker hands that you can get out there and do that. Rollins had a couple more deflections and I think 2 steals tonight.
3 steals in a block, and a big athletic block.
Yeah. So, I mean, and the 1 steal too, which I'm still trying to figure out how he got it and recovered under the basket on Kevin Huerter and ended up with the ball.
Yeah.
But yeah, like Myles, I thought was very good for them tonight on both ends of the floor. And Doc also mentioned after the game too, the staggering. I mean, I know Eric wrote a piece on it too, in the bench struggles and how heavily Doc had played the bench only lineups. And after the game, that Doc kind of owned up to it, and there was nowhere to hide from it. Of like, yeah, our bench has not been good this season, so that was part of the thought behind the staggering. But he also mentioned in doing that, it allows us to give Giannis 3 shifts per half versus the 2. And we think it's actually going to play him more minutes, which, tonight, was this the most minutes he's played all season? I think the 37 in this. So
I think he had 38 against the Raptors, the first Raptors game. I think it was about the same,
Raptors
but
game.
yeah.
Yeah. So,
and part of that was because remember Kuz got hurt. And so Giannis had to come back early in the fourth quarter, which I think threw off some of the minutes a little bit in that game.
But I mean, it's a trend that we hope to see continue here with the staggering. And if for no other reason, then, one of the other problems that this defense just continued to run into too is, especially like the last 3 games, they just have not been good at point of attack. And if you're doing that in minutes with no Giannis and Myles Turner on the floor, guys are getting past you and there's nothing stopping them. So I would hope we're going to continue to see more of this, and that this leads to more Myles Turner. I don't know if growth's the right word, but just getting him going more offensively. There's one other name that I think played a pretty big role too in what we saw with the staggering and the defense, and it's everybody's favorite player. We'll dig into that conversation coming up after this. Well, it's time to talk to you about our friends over at FanDuel. The NBA is back. There's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. Keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when the first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this sports season, whether you're following the NBA, NFL, or both. There's no better time to jump in on the action. If you haven't tried it yet, Prize Picks is the simplest way to play. Just pick more or less on at least two players' stats, and if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere Prize Picks operates, including California, Texas, and Georgia. You can use it during both NFL Sundays and NBA tip-offs. Pick your favorite players like Giannis or Jordan Love to see how your predictions play out. And they have a stacks feature where you can now pick more on any players, threes, points, assists, and more in the same lineup. So download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. All right, so Kyle Kuzma with another pretty good game here, Frank. How much longer can this like, is this the Kuz we should expect to see, where I think he finished with 11 and 8 tonight? But again, his defense, I mean, I think the two that you would point to is, hey, look what he did. And granted, it wasn't quite as long, but in stretches towards the end of the game, he was able to bother Josh Giddey, and obviously the Knicks game and Karl Anthony Towns. Like, when you have more serviceable defenders around him, that's where it really shines, I think. We saw it last year in flashes, but for a large portion of when you had Kyle Kuzma, you were asking him, hey, take on the toughest defensive assignments, and we're not going to give you much help. And get out in transition, but we're going to have you coming off the bench with a bunch of guys that aren't actually going to get out and run. So I'm not saying Kyle Kuzma was misunderstood or he was actually better than you think last year. No, but I don't think he was put in a position to succeed. And at least so far this season, he's been put in a much better position.
Yeah, and something I tweeted the other day, like, I think he's playing without ego. I think he's, when you think about the kind of style he played in Washington, where, it probably fed into his, kind of worst habits in terms of, the shot selection that the leash he had to kind of, and the expectation given some of just the lack of talent they had to put up lots of shots and, be the fulcrum of the offense a lot of the time. And I think he came into this season looking like pretty humbled about like what his role was going to be. And obviously I'm not just saying like because his minutes have been much more limited, but just I think a lot more possessions where if he catches the ball on the perimeter, he takes, one dribble and keeps it moving, not trying to do too much. And there's still times, where it's like he has like a kind of rush of blood to the head and, tries to make a play. But, I think his transition ability, I think, has been really a breath of fresh air. We talk a lot about this team trying to play faster. I mean, he's really the only like non-Giannis guy who's like, well, I say Rollins too, but like shooting threes is really important to playing fast, right? That's why like guys like AJ and Gary Trent are important to being a fast team. But to actually have guys that can also like finish at the rim and get layups, like, is actually like very useful. He had a layup finish, I think, off a Giannis pass tonight. And, I think he's been embracing kind of the role of like slipping screens, like being a play finisher, garbage man at times, rather than being a guy like, trying to do a Kevin Durant impression, which I think is sort of what he probably at times was doing in Washington. And, he was a 22 point per game scorer there, right? So I think just the requirements here are just different. Even when he's not out there with, Giannis, I think it's not like they're just putting the ball in his hands and saying like, go make plays. I've liked him rolling off, being a screener, trying to get loose in transition, etc. And again, there's still moments where he takes a quick shot or, like his passing, he'll, make a kind of poor decision as a passer. But, tonight, to me, the biggest stat was plus 14, right? Yeah. Okay. Single game plus minus, et cetera, et cetera. But, when he's coming off the bench and you win the Kuzma minutes with him not playing tons of minutes with Giannis, you're going to win that game. 9 times out of 10. Because it gets to what Doc was saying, right? The bench holistically has not performed the way you would like. And so I think I looked earlier today. I think he was like maybe like a -4 on off, which again, given he's a lot of times been subbing in for Giannis, like it's pretty good, So, and interestingly, all of his negative was on the offensive end, like in terms of the team on off, it was very bad offensively, and very good defensively. Which is kind of an interesting thing to keep an eye on. And worth noting, Giannis was massively positive offensive differential, and actually the Bucks have actually coming into this game were better defensively thus far, small samples, all those things, with Giannis on the bench, which is kind of a weird quirk that I don't think is going to last a whole lot longer. But I think part of it, goes to the fact that Kuz has been good defensively when Giannis hasn't been on the bench. And I think the challenge is then like, how do you kind of maintain an offensive structure and a consistent offense, when Giannis isn't on the floor. But yeah, credit to Kuzma. And I mean, whatever happens with this Taurean Prince situation, especially given what we mentioned about the starting lineup and some of the size issues there, I mean, there's a good chance we see what they're going to have to lean more on Kuzma than they have, which, the first 5-6 games, I think he was averaging like 18 minutes. And it's just like, man, is he really going to only play 18 minutes a game? Like,
I mean, let's say Taurean Prince misses some time. Do you see a scenario where they would actually start Kuzma, or this would more be like a Keith Bogans type thing where let's keep starting the same guys, but we're going to pull one of them early and stagger the minutes?
I would probably guess more of that. Because part of the issue, if you start Kuz and Giannis together, I mean, obviously you can stagger them, and doesn't mean like you don't have a backup 4 anymore, right? Like Kuzma can still play some backup 4, even if you were to go back into the starting 5. But suddenly like your power forward availability suddenly becomes very thin if Kuz is having to play lots of 3. But I mean, if you don't have Taurean Prince, then but you basically have no true small forwards, I guess, on the roster, right? I mean, Amir Coffey maybe, but Amir Coffey's not like 6'8" and 220, right? He's not like an ideal physical size for a small forward. He's still a little bit on the small side in terms of just like strength and physicality. But yeah, I mean, again, anytime there's injuries, right? Like it's opportunity for somebody, and certainly Coffey is a guy. Andre Jackson Jr. obviously has not found a way back into the rotation. Again, he's not necessarily a guy who's been a wing stopper type, but he's physically, certainly he's bigger than AJ and Gary Trent. I don't know that he's stronger than AJ in a way, but he's certainly obviously his athleticism and his length, obviously, and ability to be disruptive is obviously well beyond what you'd expect from AJ. So yeah, I mean, again, like it'd be nice if we didn't have to kind of go into the like, well, what's the next man up of somebody getting injured, since we've already been doing this with KPJ here early in the season. But this stuff is going to happen, whether it's Prince now or someone else later.
Who would have thought, too, we would be 9 games, almost 10 games into the season, and the leading conversation is how good Kyle Kuzma has actually been for this team. And, man, I hope Taurean Prince's injury isn't a long-term thing. Like, that's what we're sitting here talking about.
Can we talk about Ryan Rollins?
I was going to say,
Okay.
Ryan Rollins, the other guy to get to, his third 20-point game of the season. And this, I don't know how much of it, too, was, he was terrific. And obviously that 2-game stretch, he's been good all season long. But, we also have to keep in mind, yeah, Cole Anthony's there, but not having Kevin Porter Jr. also changes things for Rollins, that you're putting a heavier load on him offensively now, and he still has to do that defensively. It felt like we saw a little bit of a dip, which is to be expected for a couple of games. This game, he had a couple more of those bursts that we would see every single game, and they just kind of disappeared for the last few games. But this game, he had at least 2 or 3 more of those where he just gets right by his guy and almost surprises them with how quick he is and gets to the rim.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like the good news is, even though he hasn't obviously replicated that, what we saw in that 2-game stretch, and obviously one of the games, no Giannis, so of course he's going to get more shots. But it's not like he's been oh, he was terrible.
Bad.
He's hurting you on the floor, right? And I think that's always the upside of guys that have sort of that two-way ability is, everybody's going to have bad shooting nights or nights where they're not really finding their way offensively, but when they can still impact the game defensively, then that just gives you so much higher of a floor in terms of impact. And this game, he did not need defense to have an impact. I will say, I do think Rollins and Kuzma combined, I think, deserve a lot of the credit for Josh Giddey having, he had a triple-double, right? So good job, Josh Giddey. But, 16 points on 14 shots, 4 turnovers, did have 14 assists, but -6. I thought they generally
No, he didn't have a triple-double. He
didn't. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, he
7 rebounds.
7 rebounds. I think he had 2 back-to-back coming into this game. Maybe
Yeah.
I saw the stat of first
Yeah.
Bull to have back-to-back triple-double since Jordan in 89.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, he must have just gotten his triple. Thank you for the correction. But yeah, Giddey has been really good this season, and he's probably he is the driver of that offense in so many ways. So, he obviously, the playmaking was still there, but the fact that they were able to prevent him from really getting downhill consistently and, again, just hurting you kind of consistently, I think the Bulls had an 85 offensive points per play rating in the half court, which is very good for the Bucks, not good for the Bulls. They did a lot of damage in transition, but when the game slowed down, the Bucks, again, because they weren't fouled. That was the other, let me return it. Fouling. It's only 16 free throws for the Bulls. Hallelujah, right? Only 8 offensive rebounds for them after the first quarter. Hallelujah. And so I thought those were obviously key things. And also the turnover factor. The Bucks did not turn the ball over much. I think they had 11 turnovers. So when you think about just things that make it easier on the other team and allow them to play more, to hurt you more offensively, right? Turnovers obviously feed transition even further. I thought that was important. But yeah, Rollins and Kuzma, I think defensively really stepped up. And then, it was I felt like Rollins was shooting the ball well. I wasn't watching a box score because I was catching up after the fact. So I wasn't watching a box score at all during the game. And I didn't realize Rollins had 20 points. I thought maybe he has 14, 15.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like a quiet, sneaky 20. But, you look at his box score, 20 points on 13 shots, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, a block, only 1 turnover. The dream is that Rollins can do that. And he's the guy we talk about at the 30-minute mark, because it's just Ryan Rollins played like Ryan Rollins has shown he can play. So we talk about high floors, he's gotten to a high floor, even in the way I think we're perceiving him as we podcast about the Bucks, which is, we need to, I guess, start doing the, don't take Ryan Rollins for granted thing, because he was really good tonight. I thought Cole Anthony, steadied them and did a nice job as well, even though he was only 5 for 14. he did have 11 points, 5 assists. And again, sort of like, steadied the offense at times. Both both Cole Anthony and Rollins had nice assists setting up Giannis for dunks out of pick and roll, which, is nice to see, right? Being able to weaponize Giannis as a roller, not just having him have to do everything from scratch. So yeah, again, if this is just like, every week Ryan Rollins has a couple games where he puts up 26 and 4 and all the stocks and deflections and all that, like, then we're in a different place, I think, in evaluating the Bucks and kind of their future than I think we thought we would be coming into the year, right? Or maybe we thought KPJ may be that guy, but if you're now getting it from Rollins, and who knows, hopefully you get, a lot of productivity from KPJ in a month when he's back too.
Yeah. I mean, for Rollins, he's only had one game this season where he scored in single digits, and that was opening night when he didn't start. He's only had one really inefficient game outside of that Raptors game, which I just kind of throw out for everyone. And that, again, was opening night. Like, this, to your point, is largely who he's been. Maybe not, 32 and 25 or 27, whatever it was in those two games, but he's been this guy, kind of steady and consistent. And even in terms of protecting the ball, had 7 turnovers against the Pacers. Outside of that, he's been pretty good in the assist to turnover ratio too. So he continues to be extremely solid. And that duo too of Rollins and Kuzma, not only individually what they're able to take on the defensive side, but you mentioned it before too, just the transition game. I think Rollins, in terms of what their offense has created in transition, has been their second best guy behind Giannis in transition points. So more of that stuff you love to see continuing to come here. And now a big one on Sunday with the Houston Rockets, which will be their 10th game of the season. And, I think before the season, if you would have said, look at the first 10 games, realistically, what do you expect or what do you hope to see? I think a lot of people would say, I'll take 6 and 4. I hope they can go 7 and 3 or even better. And that's right where you are now, with a chance to get one of those two records here on Sunday against the Rockets. It's going to be tough with the number one offense in the league. And that's where it's going to be interesting too. What we touched on before is, what do we see in terms of the staggering and some of those big lineups that Doc tried tonight, because Houston is really going to lean into that.
Yeah. I mean, they have a ton of like wing physicality and athleticism, which they can also use against guards, right? I mean, so they're in many ways kind of the reverse of the Bucks, right? With Amen Thompson as basically your lead ball handler much of the time. So other than Reed Shepherd, and I haven't seen how much he's been playing lately, but like Reed Shepherd obviously is kind of undersized and kind of slight, but other than that, like, they play tons of guys with size, and I think very curious to see how the Bucks cope with, if we do see, I don't know if anybody's on the injury report, but, obviously starting in the playoffs last year, that Alperen Şengün kind of double big lineup, did real damage against the Warriors in particular at times. And, that has started a bit of a trend, right? I think Detroit's played a lot of double big lineups. It seems like that has become more of a thing that, some teams are really taking advantage of. And so a little bit of kind of back to the future, right? Like going away from just kind of playing as many 3-point shooters as possible and leaning into size and physicality. So I think it's gonna be a really good test for Giannis. The Rockets, I think, Jabari Smith, I think, has been a guy that has shown he can at least, make Giannis have an honest night of work against him, just given his ability to move his feet and the length and size he has. And of course, Steven Adams will, muck it up and make things difficult if he has to. He'll take fouls on Giannis and like catch him and prevent him from falling, but also foul him hard at the same time. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm sure they will try to see if they can get Giannis on Şengün more and attack Şengün in space. But with the likes of Thompson and Tari Eason even Kevin Durant, when Kevin Durant decides he needs to engage defensively, I mean, KD obviously has terrific size and length, no matter how old he is. So, definitely, I think a really good test. And hey, I know Şengün and Giannis kind of buried the hatchet officially after Eurobasket, but I'm gonna go ahead and say that Giannis wants to.
Be something there.
I think Giannis wants to show something. Do you think Giannis wants to have a triple-double against Şengün and show what a good passer he is? I bet he wouldn't mind putting that together.
Still yet to record one this season. He's had, 2 where he's just been
just short.
An assist short. Yeah. And Houston has gone, I think in the last couple of games, they have gone away from starting that double big lineup just because it was kind of killing their transition and just pace overall. But I wonder if we see any tweaks to it. I'm like, all right, let's try it out against the Bucks with this size, or let's go back to doing this. But yeah, it's going to be a physical game that you can always expect from the Houston Rockets. And Giannis versus Şengün, I think, is going to be worth it for the price of admission alone to see what Giannis has to bring in that game. The only shame of it is it's good for us, but Doc Rivers would be opposed to it. A 2:30 tip, which he talked about last week when we had the 4:00 Kings tip and kind of put out the warning signs of, I hate these games, by the way, so do players, because it hurts you getting into routine. So an early tip on Sunday, but it should be a very, very, very good matchup here with the Houston Rockets. Any Rollins, Kuzma, Giannis' 41 points. We talked about how good Myles Turner was as well. Any other outstanding thoughts on this one?
No. Important win. Always good to beat the Bulls, especially at home. And, gotta keep that NBA Cup.
I know. Are you an NBA Cup guy, Frank? Are you in favor of it?
Oh, yeah. NBA Cup champions last year.
Even as the reigning champs, you get some crazy looks when you talk about the NBA Cup from some people. Like, okay, I guess you're not.
What a delightful winning the NBA Cup is great, because if the Bucks had lost against the Thunder last year, everyone would be like, who cares? Whatever. It's the NBA Cup. You win it. What a delight. What a fun random win. You get a week in December where everybody's throwing love at your team. Giannis was an MVP front runner-ish guy.
For 3 days. Yeah.
For 3 days. We got a freaking banner out of it, Justin.
They call
the
most
budget,
proud display tonight.
Yeah, the most budget-looking banner ever. But I feel like that's okay. You don't want to go too overboard on an NBA Cup banner. It was great to see Dame win something with the Bucks. That was fun. So probably the only trophy he'll ever win. So cool. Yeah, I'm all about the NBA Cup. That's the true measure of the heart of a champion, Justin. So let's keep it rolling.
Look, you don't have to sell me on it, and that I'll say, if we want to break down the actual cup here, it's an important win for that point too, because if the Bulls won this game, they're 2-0 in their group with wins over the Bucks and the Knicks, and they have the 2 games left against the Hornets and Heat. You assume they beat the Hornets, you're pretty much in a really good spot and guaranteed to win your group if that's the case.
Was this the Bucks' first NBA Cup? Yeah.
So they changed the schedule this year, where it used to be Tuesdays and Fridays, and now this year it's only Fridays up until the week of Thanksgiving, when every single day is an NBA Cup day that week.
NBA Cup, or NBA Cup runneth over, Justin. It's going to be, I'm just going to be, planted on my couch all week, just gorging on NBA Cup goodness. So, great stuff. And I had totally forgotten. I think I saw the stat today. Giannis, last year's NBA Cup MVP, 2-time NBA Cup all-tournament team.
Yeah.
This is the man. Just more hardware for Giannis. I can't complain about more opportunities for Giannis to get hardware.
41 from Giannis, a defensive strong showing in the second half of this game, and the Bucks knock off the Bulls to get to 6-3 on the season. We mentioned another big one this weekend. That is Sunday with the Houston Rockets. We will break down that one for your episode on Monday. That'll do it for today, though. For Frank, I am Justin. We'll talk with you guys once again next week on Locked On Bucks.